You know, playing video games at home is good and all, but if you have the opportunity to go outside to play a game, maybe with good buddies by your side, with drinks and snacks and other games to go along with it, the arcade is the place to be. And I'm gonna head over to my local one right now. I thought we were past this crap. Well, it's still not safe to be out and about, and I had a really cool game I wanted to show off. Was it ever released outside the arcades? It was. Now how to get it? Well, I do know a guy.
Hello?
Hey, DP Joe, I would like a... Well, that was fast.
Anytime, bud.
Well, let's see what this is like. Time Traveler on DVD. It's also PS2 compatible, just in case you forgot that read DVDs. It's the early 90s, and most of the attention in the video game world was at home, with the likes of Nintendo, Sega, and other companies trying to stake their claim in the console and handheld market. But if you still wanted the best in gaming that wasn't on a PC, you would head to the arcades. The 90s saw a real resurgence in the arcade scene, with fighting games and other titles cashing in quarters, but in 1991, Sega introduced a very unique arcade machine called Time Traveler. What made it interesting was its arcade design and effect to make the lifelike characters look like they were holograms projected on the glass surface. It was quite a sight to behold, though expensive to play, and after initial success it kind of faded out as one of those arcade oddities. That was until 2001, when Digital Leisure converted the original Laserdisc game and shrunk it down to a DVD to give us a special home edition of Time Traveler. This port was released in 2001, like I said, and I didn't see much critical response to it, apart from official UK PlayStation 2 magazine giving its only 0 out of 10 rating. Harsh much? Now I wish I could have been able to show you the actual arcade machine. I was planning to go to an arcade or convention that I knew would have it when this video came about, but as the world got diseased, plans obviously had to change, so I went with this somewhat rare port a friend of mine gave. Designated Pro Joe with the save. I think this game, when viewed in any respect, is quite interesting, and this DVD release expands on it. Get ready to learn about this fascinating yet random-ass title as we take a better look at Time Traveler. As it's on a DVD, now it opens up with the signature stuff like logos of all that were involved. Thank God there aren't any previews to sit through. Apart from this. Already I'm impressed with how after a few seconds of inaction, it'll show one of the attract modes that would appear to lure gamers into playing in the arcade. I didn't think a DVD was capable of that, so good on them. But we're only getting started, so let's head into the game. So as the attract mode somewhat explains, Princess Kyla has been kidnapped by the evil scientist Time Lord Volcor in his attempt to distort the flow of time as we know it. Kyla's Society of the Galactic Federation has chosen Marshall Graham as their potential savior, and us, of course. Wise choice. To start, you can learn how the game is played or head straight into play. And what do you think you were watching this video for? Kyla explains that we have to navigate the flow of time to different time periods to ultimately reach 2552, where she's being held captive. We begin in 1873, our native time I presume, and this is where the game truly begins. Now how a game of this nature works is quite simple. QTETAE! To put it simply, this game plays very similarly to Dragon's Lair or Space Ace, probably because it was originally made by the same designer, Rick Dyer. Damn it. Did you hear something? Anyway, the object is to get Graham through the various enemies and obstacles that get in his way, which may require him to use his gun or move away from danger at the right moment. When you get past all scenes in one time period, you'll warp out from the look of it and head back to the map.
Use the joystick to change time period.
That ain't sound like proper English. I mean, it's grammatically correct, but that could have sounded better. But let's not get distracted in our travel through time. The next time periods are themed appropriately, with 50,000 BC having you dealing with cave people, 2173 has the evils of future technology, and 1998 has druggies, baseball, and the zombie apocalypse. And this is 7 years after this game, mind you. Whoa, I was wondering why this game was rated teen besides a mild violence. A word like that would do it in those days. These scenes are funny. Looking back at them now, they're just pure 90s. It's real funny to see the actors, you know, act in what was the Blue's Clues equivalent to a video game. This was all filmed on a green screen with very little props, so I commend their work, even of this big cave queen that I'd rather not have anywhere near me. Now, as I was saying, once you get past through each time period, you can move on to the next one of your choice until you have a clear path to 2552, where you must repeat the process as you go along. And that's it. That's how you play. Well, I haven't had this much spare time between segments. Guess I can play something else to make up the time. What? You want me to explain more? Alright. Unlike the arcade game, there's an indicator on the bottom right that tells you when an action is needed. If you push the right button, it'll glow yellow, signifying that you're tickety-boo and you can continue. But choose wrong, it'll go blue, and you can probably guess what happens. Dang, that's brutal. But pretty cool looking. To put your mind at ease, there's only a couple buttons to worry about, them being the directional buttons and the X button, or if you're playing with a DVD player, then you gotta use the remote's directional buttons and the enter button. But there is a reason why they highlight that it is PS2 compatible, as a game like this requires quick reaction and timing to execute the correct moves, so having a DualShock is the best way to go. That's one of the perks to playing this version, having multiple ways to play it across a couple console platforms. Another perk is being able to appreciate how unique the game looks on its own. The presentation, though not quite what you would see at the arcade, is respectable with how they try to replicate the appeal. I like how they have the slight reflection below some characters, and those shapes in the background are not unlike the real physical shapes you would see illuminated inside the arcade units, and the visuals don't look half as bad either, especially when we get gems like this. That guy was having a ball, eh? Eh? Anyway, yes, the visuals. They're pretty fluent, for the most part. My biggest gripe with this DVD version is that the action temporarily freezes so it can read the input you selected and continue appropriately. Every DVD can suffer from that issue, while a Laserdisc can continue trucking like it's the superior format. That's what happens when you go from analog to digital and something this big to something this small, shrinking down the possibilities. But you can still watch yourself die in good quality. Obviously, if you fail to make a correct move in time, you'll unfortunately succumb to the enemy that opposes you and you'll lose a life. When you lose all your lives, it's game over, but there's one way to avoid a quick death and give you another chance at making the right move. At the start of every game, you're given what is called a time reversal cube. What that does is when you make a wrong move and are in the death animation, the game will reverse back to that point, allowing you to continue back where you screwed up and not taking away one of your lives. It's quite a literal lifesaver when you have one in hand, but again, you only have one to start out with. But you can get more at the trader, where you can get 2 at a time after every time period. I assume that was the balance the DVD devs came to, as in the original arcade you'd have to pay more quarters in order to buy more cubes. And you thought microtransactions became a thing these days.
That's all you can buy now. Come back later.
Didn't you just say something different with that exact pose and mannerisms?
Thank you. Would you like to buy another?
Well, that's one way to cut costs, voice over the same clip and hope nobody notices the bad lip syncing. What I did notice though was perhaps a little unintended flaw with the cubes. On occasion, you may screw up a scene in one of the time periods and not have any or don't use any of the cubes you have. You'll lose a life and maybe get told off by this wizard guy, but you'll still continue going. Eventually, you'll come back to the map with the time period still white, signifying it not being completed, and you'll have to go back in to finish the sequences you died in. And you can't skip around either, they're required. But before hopping back in, you can visit the trader and get 2 additional cubes for your troubles, go back in, finish the time period, come back out, go to the trader and get 2 more cubes. This makes the game slightly broken and a little easy when you get to the later time periods, but doing this process means risking your lives for more cubes, so do what you think is right. I think just having 1 time reversal cube would be cool to have in real life. I've had enough of you, bro. I've had enough of you, bro. Okay, now we're on the straight path of the time flow to this hieroglyphic period where I believe it's an alternate reality where sorcery and magic actually exists. I'd say this is where the game gets more challenging as the sequences get a little long and complicated, but nothing that you wouldn't be able to handle. Keep in mind, sometimes it's not as simple as pushing a direction and shooting. Sometimes you'll have to start with facing a direction of interest as opposed to start blasting. Maybe you'll need to make a choice and see if it's correct, or on the very rare occasion, not do anything at all. This is where having an influx of those TRCs, time reversal cubes, TRCs, alright, I'll stop, can be helpful as you might need a few to save your face. Second to our destination is 1350, the medieval and ninja times. Arguably, the sequences just get that little more tougher, as the ninjas in particular have very quick moves that will require the quickest maneuverability on your part. I'll admit it took me a few go-arounds and all my time reversal cubes to figure out the patterns of these scenes. I even resorted to writing down the pattern for this light blue ninja specifically, as he was hard to remember. Now this is classic gaming at its best. One last thing to mention is that after you fully complete a time period, the devil will appear and tempt you to play his mini-game Hellgate. All it is a slot machine that can give or take lives away, so it can be a quick game over right then and there. It's the biggest risk to gamble, but you could come away with a little more than what you had, but the best advice is to avoid it altogether. Alright. We've traveled to the far distant past, then the future, then back to the past, then to a fantasy zone, then back to a future, and now we're really in a future. It stinks here. No surprise that this last time period in your travels is the hardest, with some of the longest and toughest sequences to figure out and memorize. This weird lightning tree one had my number so many times that it took all my cubes and half my lives before I figured it out. And this scene here is notable, for there's not only 1, but 2 of these sequences to throw you off in repeated playthroughs. It's worth noting that every playthrough won't be the same, as scene and sequence order can be moved around at random, and that's another impressive feat for a DVD to pull off: random chapter feature. Your analog father would be proud. No more time for jokes, we have reached Volcor. Now it's time to take him out. My last chance to stop his bending of time. I got the moves. I'm a marshal. I'm the Marshall Plan! Damn it. If you do die in this period, you'll have to start over from the beginning of a scene, but getting past the final sequence isn't as challenging as the ones before it. And with a big kick and sucker punch, Marshall Graham will have saved Kyla and the universe as we know it, and we get a victory celebration by all the cast. And even the crew if you know the secret codes. But that's how you play. A real quick experience when it's all said and done. It took me an hour to get through the whole game, but when you know what you're doing, it could probably take 15 minutes. That shouldn't take away from the fact that it's still a challenge in some areas, and its presentation is still in line with what made it unique in the first place. I don't know why, but I like it, despite its small shortcomings. I think I just have a bias towards arcade games, especially the unique ones. And hey, when you can play it at home and figure out how they work, wouldn't you like them more than anything on the PS2? It's a legitimate question, I don't know why you're laughing. Well, there are a couple tracks to be found outside of the actual gameplay, and for the little that there is in the actual game, it's barely noticeable or worth talking about. Next! One of the pluses the DVD version of Time Traveler brings is the addition of plentiful extras concerning the game's background, history, and more. The first thing you can select is Watch, where you can view a good majority of the gameplay scenes fluidly without prompts and see how they run. This is a great way to see a few scenes that may have not appeared in your playthroughs, and to perhaps figure out how a particular scene works if you're stuck on it. Because learning the game over and over again isn't going to help much. But hell, maybe trying a 3D game may help you in your efforts. It may not look it, but trust me, the effect works with that swirl in the background. How do I know? Well, with these 3D glasses that came with the game, of course. Am I hip now, Internet? Next is the history, my personal favorite option, which includes clips from the archive of the developer Rick Dyer himself. Here are 6 clips that show what look like news clips or promotional videos, all revolving around the arcade machine back when it was new. You get to see just how the machine worked, the reactions of gamers at the time, and a lot of history on Rick Dyer and his inventions. This guy has done a lot of interesting stuff. Apart from his obvious arcade successes, he's also made the Laserdisc console Halcyon that never came to be, a line of workout machines that talked and teased you with their robotic voices called Power Size, and that capita led to him licensing what was originally known as micro theater at a trade show. All this is really interesting, especially that Halcyon. Though it never released, it would have given me more to do with these discs than just stand outside and blind oncoming drivers. Lastly, there's the other games which show the attract mode, or in this case previews, of a couple titles that Digital Leisure would release on DVD. You got Dragon's Lair, Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp, and Space Ace that somehow make the Dragon's Lair Trilogy, and another game that I never heard of called Kingdom Shadowne. Or is it Kingdom 2 Shadowne? I don't know. This looks like one of those cheap VHS cartoons that I wouldn't put it past them to make a mistake. I so happen to have acquired the Dragon's Lair trilogy on DVD, as well as the elusive Dragon's Lair 3. The designated pro knows his stuff. God damn it! Time Traveler in the arcades was considered a hit, and why wouldn't it when it costed $3 to play? It isn't known how well the DVD version sold, but it is rather rare to find today, so that must mean something, right? Digital Leisure would release many Laserdisc games to DVD and Blu-ray over the years, as well as making their own games. They're still around today with new games and the rights to the Dragon's Lair Trilogy, which they released recently on modern platforms back in 2019.
Son of a mother!
This would be one of the last big contributions Rick Dyer made to the gaming industry. He's since then transitioned to being a realtor, which he may or may not still be doing. His resume of products and prototypes are a wonder to look at, and it makes me wonder what he could do today if he made a return to the industry. Sega a year later would release a conversion kit to replace Time Traveler with the lesser-known Holosseum, one of Sega's first fighting games, but not a real notable one apart from it being the only other holographic game. On a personal note, I just so happened to acquire a Holosseum machine that's in pretty rough shape on the outside. I'm hoping to restore it to its former glory, and with any luck, maybe we'll take a closer look at it next season. So, what is my rate to play? As much as I would have loved to show you an arcade machine, they're pretty hard to come by in the wild, and so is this port really. I've never seen it for sale online at all. Some would question trying it out if they ever saw one, but let me tell you, it'd be sure as hell worth it. Time Traveler is one of those games that really needs to have more prestige to its name, for being part of a distinctive and special arcade cabinet and having decent gameplay. It's something you rarely ever see, being a hologram and all. The DVD game in turn is fine for what it is. It did what it could and then some, with bonus features to let you really take a deep dive into the history and know-how of this game in its prime. All told, you should try it out the moment you come across the disc or see the actual machine. See if you can make it past a couple periods in time and become a time traveler in your own right. Just be sure it's on free play at your local arcade. Paying 75 cents to play that game in today's economy is killer. To conclude, I give this port a play rate of... should play. But that's only my opinion. If you have your own thoughts, leave a comment. If you like what you see, leave a like. If you think others would enjoy this, share it around the web. And if you want to see more, subscribe. Anyway, this has been BrianTheBlue Game Reviews, Time Traveler on DVD. Brian here, want to quickly say thanks for watching this game review, as this and other content wouldn't be possible without you. I appreciate anyone and everyone who watches my videos from all across the world, but it alarms me that over 80% of viewers aren't subscribed to the channel. So I'd like to reiterate and ask you to subscribe as well as ringing the bell to stay notified. That way you can stay up to date with future content that'll appear on the Jacobians channel. Presently I put out new quick views and current calamities every month, and my brother Alex has a brand new show all about wrestling games called WrestleBound. You might want to stick around as we're only getting started. You can also find me on a couple of other channels. I run the Starfighters Arcade channel, where we take a look at the history of our machines on the floor as well as show you our new arrivals, and on Millennial X, where me, arcade buddies, and family get into shenanigans playing, hunting, and reviewing games. If you want to explore more content, these would be the first places to go. That's all the time I got, but be sure to click the icon now if you want to watch the previous or upcoming episodes of Game Reviews.